Welcome to the Dave the Mystic Show. This is episode number 709 with writer and speaker Scott Flynn. This is December 9th, 2024 from Littleton, Colorado. Please consider signing up for show announcements through my website at www.davethemystic.com. Our guest tonight is Scott Flynn. Scott Flynn, emerging from young adulthood, has had an affinity for understanding the inherent properties of human and objective nature, from the inner workings of chemical and biological systems to the physical phenomena of heat, energy, and mass behaviors in material assemblies and structures, to the unitive mindset required to create and operate socially conscious businesses, were all, unbeknownst to Scott, a restless pursuit to locate the underlying nature of reality. It wasn't until Scott was introduced to the intimate, innate properties of self via the integration of the non-dual Eastern Vedic philosophy of Advaita Vedanta with the intelligence of Western quantum physics that love and understanding of the inherent truth of human and objective nature arose. Experiencing inherent truth directly, Scott clearly realized that not only can ever-present happiness be experienced in this lifetime, but it is the preeminent attribute of all 8 billion of us. Scott utilizes the perennial philosophy of non-duality to point you back to yourself so that you can experience the ever-present peace, happiness, and love of yourself directly. Scott holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from the University of Idaho and is a founder and former Chief Executive Officer and Chief Impact Officer of 2 certified benefit corporations. Experiencing non-duality directly is not done by adding new knowledge. It is accomplished by relinquishing false knowledge, in which all that remains is pure knowledge, yourself. Being willing to relinquish one's ego and depict it in a book is a rare undertaking that needs to be shared with others so they too can experience the permanent peace, love, and happiness resulting from such ego relinquishment. His new book is titled Love Outpouring, Experiencing Ever-Present Happiness by Illuminating and Eliminating the Difference Between Who You Are and What You Have Mistaken Yourself to Be. What a great title. So explanatory. So welcome, Scott. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I started reading in your book, and it brought back a lot to me over the many years that I've been studying similar topics. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about the difference between non-duality and duality. Can you help the listeners understand that?
Yes. So let's just give the definition of non-duality as a basis. So non-duality is the English word for the Eastern philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, where Advaita literally means not to. So that's non-dual, hence where non-duality comes from. And then Vedanta, we could call that a philosophy or a way of life. It's a way of being, which is different than a state of being. States of being come and go. And this is, therefore, a way of oneness. Advaita Vedanta, or non-duality, is a way of oneness. And according to the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, it says that there is only one reality here. That's the oneness, this one reality, which is yourself. And yourself is the single resonance of peace and fulfillment and contentment and satisfaction and beauty and joy, all the qualities that we so are desperately seeking out in the world to fulfill our life. And where it gets really amazingly profound is that this philosophy isn't just a concept. I mean, we can study it like we would do any other topic, a religion, or any topic at university, and so that we could know it conceptually. But where this becomes literally profound is that they have a practice known as self-inquiry, to where you can experience yourself as the one reality of yourself. And so it gets really intimate. It gets really direct, and you truly start to understand who you actually are when you start to turn your attention inward towards yourself and start to analyze it.
Okay, let's dig into some of this. This is going to be fun. So if you looked at the Buddhist teachings, and I'm sure you have, and they talk about Maya as being the illusion. The illusion is a big part of the concept of duality, correct? That you have the illusion that there is something there that is technically separate from you, even though with non-duality that can't exist.
Correct, yes. So Maya is the play of the one. It's the play of the one reality. And so this is where I like to bring in these two topics of relative knowledge and absolute knowledge. So relative knowledge is any knowledge that comes and goes. Now, it might be applicable in the place that it is, meaning like everything that we know in the manifestation is relative knowledge. It's only applicable under certain circumstances. And this is where Maya comes into play. Maya is relative knowledge, because when we compare everything that we're experiencing in our life, which is what you're calling Maya, that doesn't exist when we are asleep. We let this all go every night when we fall asleep. So that's why everything that we know as Maya in the world is only relative knowledge. Now, it is applicable when you are so-called awake and doing your life, right? All of physics is physics, and you don't want to step out in front of a bus. I mean, this is all applicable knowledge in life, but it's not absolute knowledge, right? So what is this absolute knowledge that is applicable in every single circumstance, in every single state? And that is awareness. Awareness is the one substance of reality. It's the one substance that Advaita Vedanta points to, which is yourself. So this is where we start to apply it to ourselves. This is where it starts to get really direct and profound, is that when we see, okay, we are aware in the waking state, which is obvious. We are aware in the dream state, right, because we're aware of our dreams. And we're aware in the sleeping state. And this is where it starts to get harder, because you're like, what do you mean? I'm asleep. I'm not aware. But when you start to analyze it, you see that you are permanently aware. Because what knows if you had a good night's sleep or not? Something had to be there while you were sleeping to know if it was good or bad, right? There is a gap between a dream and the waking state. There has to be some sort of a gap there that we're aware of, because imagine if you just went from dream to wake, and then back to dream, then back to wake without any sort of gap there. You'd be completely confused. The other fun one is, what hears an alarm clock when it goes off in the middle of the night? You're asleep, so what hears it? Awareness. Awareness it's like it's on call 24/7. Now we can take this even further than these three states to bring this point across, that awareness is the absolute truth. And anybody who's had a near-death experience, an NDE, right? They all have very similar stories. They all, die and they rise above their body, and it seems they go down a portal and they end up in these beautiful realms, and they sense God, and they might even meet God, and these are all profound. But what is the underlying thread of all of that? They were all aware of it. This is the same with blackouts. Like alcoholics, or if you get knocked out in a car accident, you go into this dark, beautiful, very peaceful place. Well, what was aware of that? Awareness. Psychedelics are the same thing, right? You get blown off into the cosmos, and you become the light, see the light, become the light. You are God. But what's aware of all of this? This is what makes it so amazing. It's like it's the most profound knowledge you can come across, is that your awareness is the absolute knowledge that is permanent across all spectrums. And when you analyze awareness, you see that it's unborn. It never came into existence. It's what makes it eternal. It's what makes you, yourself, eternal. And so this comes back to, awareness is the non-dual aspect. And when awareness plays with itself, called Maya. Maya is the appearance of duality, but it's relative. So duality is relative, and awareness is non-dual and absolute.
Well, I'll put it another way, and we'll just see how this rolls around. So one of my pet theories is, and a lot of other people have voiced it too, is that the brain is not the source of our consciousness. For my purposes, your consciousness is some undefinable cloud around you, and the brain is sort of like a transducer that allows you to interact with this reality. And that would imply that your sensory systems are also a part of that brain extension to interact with this reality. And so that always brings up the puzzling thing, but you're talking about it in an interesting way, and that's so when you turn off your sensory systems, i.e. you're asleep, you still have perception. You still interpret your experience in a visual way, with sound, with color, with smell, with touch, all these things, even though technically your physiological sensory systems are all turned off, i.e. your brain for conscious awareness is turned off. So I think what you're talking about, makes me feel more comfortable with how I perceive the function of the brain.
Yes, this is, there's a fun exercise with this. So if we look at the objects in the world, we're aware of all of the objects. The objects themselves are unaware of themselves. So when we talk about the brain in and of itself is unaware of itself. It's just an inert piece of matter. It is us, it is you, it is I who is aware of the brain. So when you start to look at awareness from this point of view, that that there's nothing in the manifestation that's aware of itself. It is you who is aware of it. So now you can start to apply this to everything that you're aware of, right? So your mind, right? What makes up a mind? Thoughts. A thought is unaware of itself. A thought can't sit on a table and know that it exists. It is you, awareness, that is aware of the thought. You could do this with images. An image is unaware of itself. It is you who are aware of it. A mind is unaware of itself. It's you who are aware of your mind. You could apply this to the body as well, right? Your sense, your emotions, your feelings. They're unaware of themselves. They're insentient. It is you, the sentient one, who are aware of them. Same with the body. Same with all of your five senses. So what this does is that when you step back and rest into yourself as awareness, then you become aware of everything else. You are the awareness that's aware of all objects in the world. So you could say it puts some distance between you being awareness. You are that which is aware, and there's distance between you and that which you are aware of. So it brings you back into a non-dual experience of yourself. That's what Advaita is pointing to. The more that you come back and rest in yourself as yourself, and yourself is awareness, that's all you know. Everything else is a projection of that.
Well, since some people may be listening to it and starting to scratch their heads, would you take this to the next step and say, me, Dave, sitting here talking to you, I'm projecting everything else out there, including all the people. So the universe that's around me that I see in all dimensions and I see all people expressing is really just an extension of me.
Yeah, but because there's only one awareness, their awareness is your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes everybody equivalent. When you come back to the absolute one knowledge of awareness, well, there's only one. So if anything is aware of itself, that is the one. So your awareness is my awareness, is all 8 billion of our awarenesses. There's not awarenesses. There's just awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have our individual awareness or consciousness in this body and it ends at the skin and then there's distance and then there's your body that has awareness or consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
There's just awareness. Non-duality.
Well, it reminds me of something that I tell clients when I'm doing energy healing, and I joke about it, but I tell them I think healing work on others is one of the most selfish things you can do, because if you become aware of the connectedness between you and everybody else, and somebody else is hurting, indirectly, somehow, at some level of awareness, you will be hurting, and so by helping them to heal, you're helping yourself.
Yes. And you help them to heal by knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you know yourself, you know their self. And if you see them suffering, you you want them to be relieved of that suffering because it is you who is also suffering. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's jump around a little bit. Let's talk about happiness. I'll tell you my experience with happiness when I work at metaphysical fairs on the reader side of the table, and the reaction is usually somewhat uniform and quite surprising. When somebody sits down and they're talking about their lives and their challenges, and I just ask them, what would make you happy? And it's like a deer in the headlights. Everybody talks profoundly about, yeah, I just want to be happy and everything. And if you pin them down and say, okay, right now I have a magic wand. I can tap it and do something for you that'll make you happy. What would I have to do? And they're kind of shocked. They don't know where to go with that. Has that been your experience? Is that why you've gotten more into talking about the happy factor in your book?
Yeah, this is where we've been misled to what we think is happiness. We have been, by no fault of our own, told that happiness resides out in this world somewhere, and it's our job this life to go find it. Right?
Yeah, that's like snipe hunting on a camping trip.
Exactly. Yes, it is. Yes. And so we go out on this adventure of life to try to find it in wealth and friendship and marriage and travels and substances. I mean, we know all the ways that we try to fulfill ourselves. And we can't deny that most of these temporarily work. And that's where we get confused, because we think, oh, I just, got a raise. That made me happy. So therefore I'm going to work harder so I can get another raise and be happy again. Right? Because happiness seems to wear off. Right? Nobody in this world is permanently happy as a person. And that's where this is going. You can be permanently happy, but once it's when you start to see the mechanism of what happiness is. So let's say you did win the lottery, and you're happy. Well, what is the mechanism there? Well, what happened is that your desires were satisfied. So you felt whole. Well, what feeling whole is a collapse of ego into the one reality of yourself. That's true wholeness. Right? But where we get confused is that we think it was the money we won, not the dropping back into self, where the true happiness resides. So what do? We go out and try and win the lottery again, instead of seeing that the permanence of happiness resides in ourself as ourself. Right? So the lottery is impermanence, and we're out seeking the impermanence. Wealth is impermanent, relationships are impermanent, travel is impermanent. It's all impermanent. And what we seek is the permanence of self. And once you start to understand that mechanism, instead of reaching out into the world for happiness, when you reach back into your heart, into yourself, where true happiness is experienced, then you can start to realize, oh, lasting, permanent happiness is possible in this life. I've just been reaching in the wrong direction.
Okay. As you're talking, it reminds me of something I heard. I have 3 older brothers and 2 are psychologists, and one of the psychologists' brothers has had experience with people who have different types of addictions, and he's worked with people who have a gambling addiction. And in researching literature, what he's found is that the people with the most severe gambling addiction are those that early in their gambling lives, they had a big win, like winning a car. And forever after that, they're pursuing it because they know it can happen. It happened to them. And they will blow all their savings. They'll give up their house. They'll lose their family. They'll be living on the streets because they're going to put every coin they can into a slot machine knowing that, yes, it can happen again to me.
Yeah.
And that sounds very much like your discussion of, grasping after a second lottery win.
Yeah, they've just taken it to an extreme where it's starting to destroy their life, where the rest of us, the bulk of us, you could say, are doing it in what society would consider healthy, and wealth and travel and friendship. And none of these are wrong. That's the thing. This is not saying that everything I'm mentioning has a wrong factor to it. That's completely not what I'm pointing to. What's being pointed to is that regardless if you win the lottery, you're happy. You're happy before you win the lottery, you're happy during you win the lottery, and you're happy, a month or two or a year later after you've won the lottery, when typically you would be back trying to win the lottery again, trying to be happy. So this isn't saying that you go live in a cave to be happy. This is just saying realize where happiness resides. And it gets really obvious. When you experience happiness, where do you experience it? Does your friend experience your happiness for you? Does the car experience happiness for you? No. You experience happiness. Therefore, it has to be in you. It has to be. So this is saying that the attention, because we haven't really gotten to how you get there permanently yet, but this is all about learning how to turn your attention back into yourself where happiness resides. And what you attend to, you experience. So the more you attend to yourself throughout the day, guess what? The happier you are throughout the day, the more at peace you are, which is the whole, the only reason to be in this message. This message is about experiencing peace and joy and beauty. It just takes a long time to try to describe it because it's so foreign to us. And it seems like when you come across Advaita or non-duality, it's extreme. Your mind, your ego is going to say, hold on, this is too intense. When it's actually so profoundly simple that the mind can't get it, because it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's prior to the mind. It's what knows your mind is what's being pointed to. So the mind's an afterthought. It can never know the self directly. You could say the mind or your egoic mind is finite and your self is infinite, and the finite can never know the infinite.
I think one of the things that illustrates happiness for me is I've seen him speak once in person, but I've seen lots of pictures and lots of recordings, and that's the Dalai Lama, and he just radiates that happiness. It just he exudes it.
Yes, absolutely. When somebody knows who they are, there's no more veil left. There's no more ego. The ego, the sense of individualism in us, the sense that I am a person doing this, that veils your radiance. And when you know yourself, that's another way of saying the ego has dissolved. This veil has dissolved. So your light, your beauty, your shining just comes through inadvertently. There's no effort in being radiant. In fact, when you think about it, radiance is the absence of effort. That's why you're radiant, because there's nothing blocking you. There's nothing blocking that beauty that just wants to shine.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, he's a wonderful example of it. So yeah, when you know yourself, you inadvertently and unavoidably shine. You can't stop it anymore.
I think that really shows up in the Bible nicely when they talk about not putting a bushel basket over your light. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes, there's a lot of, egoic-based commentary in the Bible, right? That's saying they don't necessarily use the word ego. They say, the light of darkness, or the light will shine out darkness. Well, light is yourself, and the darkness is ego. You could say that the fall from grace is when we started identifying as something other than ourself.
Yeah.
And that's what's clouding the light of God within us, is this sense that we are somebody other than him. So, yes.
Well, tell us more about your book, Love Outpouring. What was your goal for it? What led you to write it?
Yeah, I wrote it for two reasons. The first one was to show my love and gratitude for the sages and the teachers and the culture that have kept this absolute knowledge alive. That it's never been hidden. That's the thing. This is not some secret message that only a few chosen ones get to, luckily stumble upon. This is completely free and open. And so for those that keep it alive, I just had to show my love and gratefulness. Especially it's the knowledge that set me free. There is a body of knowledge in this world that will set you free, and this is one of those bodies. The other one is for the reader, so that they can experience this. I say very early on in the book, you have to be courageous. This is for the courageous ones that want to know the truth of reality and to experience what that means. And the reason you need to be courageous is because it's going to put information in front of you that is going to compromise who you think you are at this time. And for those who are willing to venture down the path, they will see and experience what the message is saying, that if you turn within and dissolve the ego to know yourself, you will experience these wonderful qualities that I'm pointing to tonight. So those were the two reasons, show my love and gratitude, and so that the reader has a chance to experience this themselves.
Well, as I was reading into your book, I really appreciated all the footnotes you have and the background you give off of your sources. That was very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, the book is meant to somewhat trap your mind from escaping from it, right? So it's anytime your mind wants to run off, I hopefully have like a net there that catches your mind and brings it back in towards your heart. And because everything in the manifestation, in Maya, is pointing you back to this oneness within yourself, then I try to make that obvious throughout the book. That's why I've got quotes from like scientists and philosophers and humanitarians and artists and so on. And I have exercises and examples and stories and metaphors, and I do my best to keep you engaged so that it gives you the best chance to see what's being pointed to.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of those little comments and things that you have, and you're talking about the things that steer you back, it just reminds me so vividly of Wizard of Oz, where at the end Dorothy is told by Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, well, you could have gone home at any time. All you had to do is just tap your heels together 3 times and say there's no place like home. And the big question is, well, why didn't you tell this to me before? It's because you wouldn't have believed me.
Gosh, that is a great example. Yes, it goes back to we are permanently aware. We're permanently aware of ourselves. And what has happened is just we've covered it up with this sense of individual. And so you're right. We are all permanently aware of ourselves. It's just we have forgotten it. There's a term for it in Advaita. It's called ignorance. And ignorance just means the forgetfulness of yourself. And so we cover ourselves with this forgetfulness. And by turning the attention back onto yourself, you start to remember who you actually are. So, yes, the Wizard of Oz, that's wonderful. It's perfect because that is so true. At any time you could wake up or become liberated, And the thing is you've always been that. When you know yourself, you'll turn back to look at the path that you've covered, all the ground, and you realize there never was ground to cover because you've always been yourself. The gateless gate, right? You have this at first this intense gate, this intense threshold you got to pass through, and it's so hard and it's challenging, and you get through it and you turn around and you look at the gate and the threshold to see what you accomplished, and you realize there never was one. And then you laugh.
Yes. It's just, I can't imagine why I made that such a big obstacle. It was all in my mind.
That's right. Absolutely. But it's just the ego being the ego. It's its job. The ego's underlying reality is ignorance. It's forgetfulness. It's what it is. And so we can't beat ourselves up for it. We just recognize it for what it is. And when you turn within to see what reality truly is, when you turn back to look at the ego, you're like, well, it never existed. It was a true mirage. And we can't deny that there was a time that it did appear to be here. But it's clearly seen that it never was.
Well, there's just so many classic stories about somebody overcoming an obstacle, and whether or not the obstacle was manifested as a real large obstacle, or typically in most stories that are inspirational, it was in the person's mind that it was in the way. And once they overcame it, it was like, wow, how did I let that get in the way, and how did I make it so big? It's sort of like when you have two people who are getting very, very serious about their long-term relationship, and the guy finally decides to go out and buy an engagement ring and propose. And, he's got all those boogeymen in his mind saying, What if she says no? What if she says, let's put it off? What if she says, well, it's too early to make this kind of a decision? All these things about what could get in the way. And then, he finally gets on one knee and proposes to her, and she says, well, I'd love to marry you. And it's like, oh, wow, is that easy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We all know that voice in our head, right? That the doubter, the denier, the one that just, it doesn't seem to be favorable to us. That's what disappears in this message. That's exactly what disappears. That's the ego. That's your egoic mind. And that's what goes away. And therefore, there's nothing left to bug you anymore. It just, everything is what it is. And what it is peace. Because your mind is absent, which is saying it's silent. And a silent mind is another way to say the experience of yourself. Yeah, the chattering monkey mind dissolves. And the moment you get a taste of that, it's over. I mean, because you'd be like, because there's going to be doubts going into this message of like, there's no way this can be true. There's no way. And if you allow it to yourself to look behind the curtain and go within to see, the moment you taste it, it's over. Because you say to yourself, well, what did I do to have a more peaceful life? Well, I just turn within. Well, I'm just going to keep doing that because that works. So yeah, it kind of leads us into, the practice of getting here. It's called self-inquiry. And it's literally learning how to turn your attention back into the source of itself. So you could say your attention arises out of your heart, and it's attending to all these objects in the world and in your mind and in your body. And you're just turning that attention back around to its source. And the source is yourself. So the more you attend to self, the more the forgetfulness dies down, and the more you remember the truth of the one reality, the truth of awareness of yourself, the absolute knowledge, the only one absolute knowledge here.
Well, part of the thing that is nice about your book that attracts me to it is that you have some exercises in there. Can you talk about what your goal was for the exercises and maybe give an example or two?
Yeah, like the one I just mentioned, self-inquiry, is the biggest one. This is where I try to get everybody that comes to me for asking questions and help. If you can get to self-inquiry, meaning having the courage to let the world go with your attention and bring it back onto yourself, that's pretty much everything. You're on your own from there. Some of the examples I use, because it's counterintuitive. So self-inquiry, what makes it so strange is that we're so used to putting an effort into gaining something, right? We put efforts into our career to gain, finances and status, and we put efforts into, for an athlete, we put it in so that we can run the race. But what self-inquiry is your relinquishing effort. It's a relinquishing of effort to achieve something. And this goes to the Taoist Wu Wei, right? I think you've heard of that, right? Wu Wei, effortless action. Well, that's exactly what this is. where Wu Wei is, in the absence of effort, something arises out of that. Well, what arises out of the absence of effort? Peace, contentment, fulfillment, satisfaction, everything that we're after. So it takes a while in self-inquiry to figure out what this actually means. Like, how do I let go? What does it mean to become effortless? And one example I have, if you can picture, if you open up your palm and just let your palm just be this free-floating, open hand. This is us as babies. We're just this free-floating. There's no energy in this free-floating palm. It just is. And over time, we start to build this ego. Our parents and our brothers and sisters and coaches and clergy and advisors, they all start to tell us who they think we are. And we start to believe them. And this free-floating palm starts to clench up. So if you take your palm and you just slowly clench it into a fist, well, this is us in our 20s and 30s and 40s working on ourselves, becoming somebody. And what we're becoming is a contraction, a hard contraction solidness of ego, a person. And what this does in self-inquiry, you could say it, well, before I go on, all of the energy is in this fist, right? I mean, you're clenching your fist hard. You can feel the energy and the tension in there. So you've already put all of the energy into this fist. What self-inquiry is it breaks this fist apart. It starts relinquishing that stored energy in the fist. And this fist that used to be this tight contraction of tension starts to relax and relax. And the more energy it releases, the more it comes back into this open palm of freeness, totally unbound. And going from the fist to the palm, there's no new energy in that. You're relinquishing energy. This is the Wu Wei. You're letting go of the energy, and what happens? You get freedom out of that.
Very cool.
Yeah, and again, when you're doing self-inquiry and you experience this, just even it's for a moment, like you figured out how to let go, and you let go, and you felt like this expansiveness, even if for a moment you're like, wow, that was cool. I'm going to keep doing that until I have no energy in my system. I'm boundless freedom. I've got no edges anymore, right? Because you could say the fist has edges. It has boundaries. It's bound.
Yeah.
It's bondage. And this is going back into liberation, freedom, expansion.
You reminded me of experiences I went through. I worked in aerospace for over 40 years, and even as I was doing my energy healing and other metaphysical work on the side for almost just slightly less than the same amount of time. But it was really nice to get out of the aerospace biz because I really felt that now I can be authentic. You know, I can be Dave in any situation that I go to. I don't have to wear a mask to comply. And I can be nice guy Dave, and I don't have to worry about what are they going to think if I talk. What are they? Am I talking about the right subjects? Am I doing this? At this point, I don't care. I just come out. I'm Dave. You know, You know, you either want to be around me or you don't want to be around me. That's your choice. I don't care. I'm Dave. I'm not going to put on a mask to make you feel more comfortable or make you feel happier or make you feel like, well, I'm doing something that's more socially appropriate for the circumstances. And I found that to be tremendously freeing in my life.
Yeah, I like to say this message, it doesn't say, this message isn't trying to change the world. This message is saying when you know yourself, the world automatically changes. Because you perceive the world as you experience yourself. So if you experience yourself as a rigid, limited person in this body who's an object, then when you peer out into the world, everything else is objects that needs to be maneuvered through, maybe manipulated somehow so that you can live and survive. But if you know yourself as the one, that's all you know. There are no more objects. So this isn't saying that. This is saying that you change the world by changing and knowing yourself. You know, because the ego, it wants the world to change so that it can have a better life, right? It wants to, when it goes to work in the morning, it wants all the lights to be green. It gets to work, it wants a raise without working for it. When the kids call, they always get A's on their tests. You know, I mean, it's just, it wants this perfect world. It wants its financials to go always up, right? And this is saying, this is flipping it 180 degrees, saying, no, the world's not going to change. You can't change the world. It's going to have its so-called issues, but you change how you perceive the world. If you're at peace, then the world's at peace regardless of what the world's doing. The world could be at war, and you experience yourself as peace, and you see war as peace. It doesn't mean that you won't pick up a gun and fight if you need to. I mean, some of the most amazing pieces of literature were done on the battlefield, right? The Bhagavad Gita. It's there. It's specifically on the battlefield to show you that you can be at peace while at war. And so, you know, if you view the world, I don't want to, view the world as war, but the world has issues, right? It's always, it's never happy with itself. But if you're happy with yourself, then the world is automatically that as well. It's a totally different twist on it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the war makes me think of interesting thing. So if you go into the Pacific Ocean is typically very calm in most places. And if it gets too calm, it gets stagnant, and the little critters on the surface start to die. And when the little critters on the surface die, they release little tiny dust particles that float up through the air and eventually get up high enough that they become nuclei for clouds to form, and then suddenly the clouds form, and you get a great big churn the water, thrashing thunderstorm, and that renews the water below and the critters who live there, and so it's a replenishment. And I wouldn't want to say war is replenishment, but I would say that sometimes too much of a peaceful situation somewhere, people get slow and lazy and start to fall behind, and they need something creative to move them forward. And disappointingly, a lot of times it's war versus something else. But if it's war, it's going to be war to essentially create the thunderstorm that churns everything and gets people out of their little hidey holes and back engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it's seen that you don't have control if the war starts or not. You would never start war because self has no idea what agitation is or irritation or dis-ease. It has no idea what that is. All it knows is complete peace and stillness and silence. Mm-hmm. And so, it's, by being yourself, you radiate this into others, and it's more likely that, war in the future might not start because of it. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we're coming up towards the end here. Where can people find your book, Scott?
Well, at all the typical places, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and if you're in Europe, it's in, I'm dropping, Indie Books is a local bookstore, kind of like a Barnes & Nobles over there. You can reach me on my website, loveoutpouring.com. You can reach out to me there by email. And I have over 250 YouTube videos on my YouTube channel, and that's at Love Outpouring.
Oh, great. And do you work with people one-on-one?
Yeah, I was going to thank you. Yeah, yes, I do free one-on-one non-duality sessions, and you can book that through my website.
Oh, great. Well, it's very nice that you're giving back, so thank you.
This is my way, yes.
Very good. Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest tonight. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. And for our listeners, please join us for our show next week with shamanic practitioner and healer Alex Urbina. Thanks for listening, and blessings. Have a great week.